the girl who turned water into diamonds. Grace woke up to her stepmother's voice cutting through the morning air. "You lazy girl. The sun is already up and you're still sleeping? Get up now and fetch water. 20 trips today." Mrs. Victoria stood over Grace's sleeping mat in the small room behind the main house. 3 years had passed since Grace's mother died, and this room that smelled of old yams and loneliness had become her world. "Yes, Ma," Grace said quietly, getting up. Her 18-year-old body already hurt from yesterday's work. Her father, Mr. Johnson, traveled constantly for his business. He never saw how his new wife treated his daughter. And when he came home, Mrs. Victoria was always sweet and loving, while Grace looked tired and dirty from all the work. "After water, you'll wash everyone's clothes, cook for the whole family, and clean the entire compound," Mrs. Victoria said, looking at her expensive nails. "My daughters Jennifer and Sarah need to rest. They can't be doing slave work like you." Grace said nothing. She picked up her buckets and started walking to the river. The path through the village was quiet this early. Grace walked like a ghost. Other girls her age were planning their futures, going to school, meeting boys. But Grace just carried water and cooked food and washed clothes for people who hated her. "Hey, Grace!" Her friend Blessing called out from her mother's shop. Blessing was the only person in the village who still talked to Grace like a human being. They were both 18 and used to be close before Grace's mother died. "Blessing, good morning," Grace said, trying to smile. "Good morning. Grace, look at you. You're too thin. Your clothes are torn. That woman is killing you slowly." Blessing came closer, her voice dropping. "Why don't you tell your father? He won't believe me. Mrs. Victoria is very clever. This is not right. Your mother was my mother's best friend. If she was alive and saw you like this," Blessing's voice cracked. "Please, I have to go. If I'm late, she'll beat me." Blessing grabbed Grace's hand. "I'm coming to visit you later today. That woman can't stop me from seeing my friend." Grace nodded and continued to the river. At the river, Grace put down her buckets. The water was cool and clear. This was the only place she felt peace. "Hey," Mrs. Victoria's voice couldn't reach her. "Hey," she could breathe. She knelt down and started filling the first bucket. As the water poured in, tears started falling from her eyes. She was so tired of being treated like dirt, so tired of working from dawn till midnight, so tired of being hungry while Jennifer and Sarah ate meat and rice. "Mama," Grace whispered to the water, "I tried to stay kind like you taught me, but I'm so tired. I'm so tired. Mama, I don't know how much longer I can do this." She cried quietly, her tears mixing with the river water. "My daughter, please, can you give me some water?" Grace jumped up and turned around. An old woman stood there, bent over, shaking, holding an empty cup. Her clothes were old and torn, and she looked like she could barely stand. Mama. Yes, yes." Grace immediately grabbed a bucket and poured water into the old woman's cup, helping her hold it steady because her hands were shaking so much. The old woman drank slowly, then looked at Grace with cloudy eyes. "Thank you, my daughter. You have a good heart. Why are you crying?" Grace wiped her face quickly. "It's nothing, Ma. Just, my stepmother is hard on me. But it's fine. I'm grateful to be alive. Grateful even when suffering." The old woman's voice was strange, like it was coming from far away and very close at the same time. "My mother taught me that," Grace said, her voice breaking. "She said to stay kind even when people are wicked to you. She said kindness is its own reward." Grace started crying again. "But Mama, I'm starting to think she was wrong. Kindness just makes me a fool. I work like a donkey. I'm kind to everyone, and nobody cares. Nobody sees me. Sometimes I wish I could just disappear." The old woman studied her carefully. "Help me home, child. I live just through those bushes, but I'm too weak to walk alone." Grace looked at the sun. It was getting higher. Mrs. Victoria would be furious if she was late. She would beat Grace with that stick she kept by the door. But then she looked at the old woman, so frail and helpless. "Of course, Ma. Hold my arm." Grace walked slowly with the old woman through the bush path. It took almost 20 minutes. The whole time, Grace was calculating how angry Mrs. Victoria would be, how much pain she would feel later. But she couldn't leave this old woman struggling in the bush. When they reached a small clearing, the old woman stopped walking. She turned to face Grace. And then everything changed. The old woman's bent back straightened. Her cloudy eyes suddenly blazed with light. Her torn clothes shimmered and became bright like the sun. She grew taller and taller until she was towering over Grace, power radiating from her like heat from fire. Grace fell to her knees, her mouth open in shock. "Don't be afraid, my daughter," the woman said. But now her voice sounded like thunder and music at the same time. "I am Mama Miri, the goddess of this river. I walk the earth in disguise to test people's hearts." A goddess? Grace could barely speak. "Yes. Do you know how many people pass this river every day? Hundreds. Do you know how many stop to help an old woman begging for water? None. They see a poor person and suddenly they're too busy, too tired, too important." The goddess smiled sadly. "But you stopped, even knowing you would be punished, even carrying your own heavy pain. Your kindness comes from a pure place, child." I just did what my mother taught me," Grace whispered. "Your mother watches you from the other side," the goddess said gently. "She's been begging me to help you. She's been crying for you. Today, I finally answered her prayers." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "My mother, she sees me. Every day, every tear you've cried, she's felt it, and she's so proud of you for staying kind when the world was cruel." The goddess placed her hands on Grace's head. "From this moment forward, every time you fetch water from my river, it will transform into precious stones. Diamonds, rubies, emeralds. Your beauty will shine like the sun. And very soon, someone worthy will find you and give you the life you deserve." Grace was crying so hard she couldn't speak. "Go now," the goddess said. "Fetch your water and watch." Grace ran back to the river, her heart pounding. She grabbed her bucket and dipped it into the water. When she lifted it up, she gasped. The water was changing right before her eyes. It sparkled, then solidified, turning into perfect, gleaming diamonds that filled her bucket with clicking sounds. "Jesus!" Grace shouted. She looked at her reflection in the river and screamed again. Her face had transformed. Her skin glowed. Her eyes sparkled. Even her torn clothes seemed to drape beautifully on her body. She looked like a completely different person. Grace walked home slowly, her bucket heavy with diamonds. Villagers stopped and stared at her with their mouths open. "Is that Grace?" someone whispered. "What happened to her? She looks like an angel." When Grace reached the compound, Mrs. Victoria was standing outside, her face red with anger. "So you think you can waste my whole morning?" She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes going wide. Jennifer and Sarah came running out of the house. They froze when they saw Grace. What did you do?" Mrs. Victoria whispered. Grace said nothing. She walked to the storage drum and poured out the contents of her bucket. Diamonds, rubies, emeralds. They cascaded into the drum like rain, clattering and sparkling in the sunlight. Mrs. Victoria's eyes bulged. Her hands started shaking. "Where did you get this? How? What happened?" "At the river, Ma," Grace said quietly. "An old woman asked me for water. I helped her. She was a goddess." Mrs. Victoria's face changed. The shock disappeared and something else took its place. Greed. Calculation. Her mind was working fast. "A goddess," she said slowly. "At the river." That afternoon, Blessing came to visit like she promised. When she saw Grace, she started crying. "Grace, what happened to you? You look amazing." Grace told her everything. About the old woman, the goddess, the blessing. Blessing hugged her tight. "Your mother answered your prayers. Finally, you're getting what you deserve." But across the compound, Mrs. Victoria was planning. That night, while everyone slept, she was already thinking about tomorrow morning. About going to the river. About getting her own blessing. If that stupid Grace got diamonds from helping an old woman, Mrs. Victoria muttered to herself, then I'll help that old woman even better. I'll be rich. Richer than everyone in this village. The next morning, before the sun even came up, Mrs. Victoria dressed in her most expensive clothes and hurried to the river. "Where is she? Where is this goddess?" she muttered, looking around. She started filling her bucket, calculating how many diamonds she would get. "Please, my daughter," came a voice. "Can you spare water for an old woman?" Mrs. Victoria spun around. There she was, the bent old woman, trembling, holding an empty cup. Yes, water, of course." Mrs. Victoria scooped water carelessly, splashing half of it, and shoved the cup at the old woman. The old woman drank slowly. "Thank you, daughter. Can you help me home? I'm too weak to walk alone." "Help you home?" Mrs. Victoria's fake smile slipped. Mama, I'm very busy. I have important things to do. My husband is an important man. You know, I have responsibilities. Surely you can manage a small walk by yourself. Just a short distance. Look, I already helped you. I gave you water, didn't I? Free water. You people are never satisfied, always wanting more and more. Mrs. Victoria's real nature was showing now, ugly and impatient. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have blessings to collect." The old woman straightened up slowly. "Blessings?" Her voice changed completely, becoming deep and powerful. Mrs. Victoria's eyes went wide as the transformation happened. The bent old woman became a tall, powerful goddess, radiating light and power. "I am Mama Miri," the goddess said, her voice like thunder. "And you, Victoria Johnson, have shown me your true heart." "Wait, I can explain. I didn't mean." "You meant every word. Where Grace showed kindness expecting nothing, you showed calculation expecting everything. Where she gave time she didn't have, you counted every second you wasted. Where she saw a person who needed help, you saw an obstacle to your greed." Mrs. Victoria fell to her knees. "Please, I'm sorry. I'll change. I'll be kind to Grace. I promise." "Too late for promises," the goddess said coldly. "You've beaten a motherless child. You've starved her while your daughters feasted. You've worked her like an animal and taught your children to be cruel. Your heart is stone, woman. Hard, cold, dead to compassion. No, please. Let your body match your heart," the goddess said, raising her hand. Mrs. Victoria felt it starting in her feet, a coldness spreading upward. She looked down and screamed. Her legs were turning to stone. Gray, hard, solid. No, stop. Grace, help me, please. Her voice got weaker as her chest turned to stone. Her arms froze mid-air, reaching for help that wouldn't come. Within seconds, Mrs. Victoria Johnson was no longer a woman. She was a stone statue by the river, frozen forever in her moment of terror. "Let all who pass remember," the goddess said quietly. "Cruelty turns the cruel to stone." Then she disappeared. By sunrise, the whole village had gathered at the river, staring at the stone figure of Mrs. Victoria. Is that not Mrs. Victoria? The woman has turned to stone. God is not sleeping. Mr. Johnson came home that afternoon to chaos. His daughters were crying, not because they loved their mother, but because they were terrified. And Grace stood quietly in the compound, her new beauty impossible to ignore. What happened? Mr. Johnson demanded. The story poured out from 20 different mouths. How he'd been blind, how his wife had been cruel, how Grace had suffered while he traveled and made money, how a goddess had judged and found Victoria wanting. Mr. Johnson fell to his knees in front of Grace, tears streaming down his face. "Forgive me. I was a fool. I chose business over my daughter. I left you with a wicked woman and never looked back. I'm not your father. I'm a stranger who failed you." Grace was crying too. "Papa. No, don't call me Papa. I don't deserve it. I have to earn that name back." He was sobbing now, this big man broken completely. "Your mother trusted me to protect you, and I failed. I failed her. I failed you." Grace knelt down and hugged him. "Papa, I forgive you, because that's what Mama taught me. Kindness forgives." The village was still talking about the miracle days later when a convoy of expensive cars drove into town. Out stepped a young man in fine clothes, surrounded by guards. "I'm David Okonkwo," he announced. Prince of the Eastern Kingdom. I've heard stories about a girl who turns water into diamonds. I came to see if it's true. They brought him to Grace's compound. When Prince David saw Grace, he stopped walking. She wasn't dressed in expensive clothes. She was actually helping Blessing carry firewood, laughing about something. The prince watched her for a long moment. He'd met 1,000 beautiful women, but there was something different about this one. The way she smiled at her friend. The way she stopped to greet an old man passing by. The kindness in her eyes. "Your Grace?" he asked, approaching her. "Yes, sir. I mean, Your Highness." Grace bowed awkwardly. "My mother died when I was young too," David said quietly. "I know what it's like to miss that love." Grace looked up, surprised. "I'm sorry for your loss. They say you turn water into diamonds. But I think the real treasure is something else." David smiled. "Your heart." Their courtship was quick. David visited every day, not to see diamonds, but to talk to Grace. To hear her laugh. To understand how someone who suffered so much could still be kind. 3 months later, they married. It was the biggest wedding the village had ever seen. Jennifer and Sarah came to the ceremony, terrified that Grace would take revenge on them. But during the reception, Grace called them forward. Everyone got quiet, expecting drama. "Jennifer, Sarah," Grace said, holding both their hands. "I know you're scared. I know you think I'll punish you for how you treated me." They were both crying now. "But you lost your mother too," Grace continued, her own tears falling. "I know that pain. I've lived that pain. So I forgive you. Let's start over. Let's be sisters for real this time." Jennifer collapsed into Grace's arms, sobbing. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We were wicked to you." "Sure," Grace said, holding them both. "It's over now. It's over." There wasn't a dry eye in the whole room. Even Prince David was wiping his face. When Grace stood to make a speech, Blessing brought her something. A small notebook. "What's this?" David asked. "Letters I wrote to my mother after she died," Grace said softly. She opened to a page and read aloud, her voice shaking. "Mama, today Mrs. Victoria beat me for breaking a plate. But I didn't cry where she could see. I remembered what you said about staying kind. Mama, some days I think you were wrong. I think kindness just makes me weak. But then I remember your face, and I try again. I try to be the daughter you raised. Even when it hurts. Even when nobody sees. I hope wherever you are, you're proud of me." Grace's voice broke completely. "Mama, you were right. Kindness was never foolish. It was just waiting for the right moment to bloom. I wish you were here to see it. I wish you could meet David. I wish you could see that your daughter is finally happy." The crying in the room became louder. Men and women, young and old, everyone was sobbing. Even the servers had stopped working to wipe their eyes. "Your mother is proud," David said, holding Grace close. "I know she is." Years passed. Grace became Queen Grace, known throughout the land for her kindness and wisdom. The diamonds still appeared when she drew water, but she used them to build schools and hospitals. She never forgot what it felt like to be helpless. Every year on her mother's death anniversary, Queen Grace returned to her village. She would go to the river, draw water with her own hands, and watch it turn to diamonds. Then she would visit her mother's grave and pour the diamonds there like flowers. One year, her daughter Princess Joy came with her. The little girl was 6 years old and curious about everything. "Mama, why do you still fetch your own water when you have servants?" Joy asked. Grace smiled, kneeling down to her daughter's level. "Because, my love, I never want to forget the girl I was. The girl who suffered but stayed kind. The girl who had nothing but gave everything. If I forget her, I might become the kind of person who forgets what it's like to need help. Like the stone lady by the river." Joy asked. "Yes, baby, like the stone lady." Grace looked toward the river where Mrs. Victoria's statue still stood, a permanent warning. She forgot that every person matters. She forgot to be kind. And she paid the price. "I'll always be kind, Mama," Joy said seriously. "Just like you." Grace hugged her daughter tight, tears in her eyes. "That's all I want, my love. Stay kind. Even when it's hard. Even when people are cruel. Because in the end, kindness is the only thing that really matters." As they walked back to the palace, the river sparkled in the sunlight. Somewhere in the water, somewhere in the air, Mama Miri was watching and smiling. The universe had balanced its scales. Cruelty had turned to stone, and kindness had turned to diamonds. But the greatest treasure was never the diamonds. It was always the heart that stayed pure through the suffering. The heart that chose kindness when cruelty was easier. The heart that believed, even in the darkest moments, that goodness would win in the end. And it did. Asterisk moral. True kindness that expects nothing in return will always be rewarded, while greed and cruelty will turn your heart to stone long before your body follows. What you give to the world comes back to you, so choose kindness even when it hurts. If you enjoy this story, please click subscribe and share to your loved ones.